We're back and talking with Mark Cohen about transcendental meditation technique. Now, this is something that I've just learned about recently, and I think it's really neat, and there's a deep history to this. But can you first tell us what this is?
It's a simple, natural mental technique you practice twice a day for about 20 minutes, sitting comfortably in a chair. And the purpose of it is to reduce the activity of the mind, to settle the mind down, to experience very, very deep rest in mind and body for stress reduction.
Okay. So when you hear about meditation and things like that, how is it different than just what people would think when they hear meditation?
Well, a lot of people have a sort of preconceived notion that meditation is difficult, that it may be concentration or forcing the mind in some way. TM is a very simple, effortless technique. It doesn't require any special abilities, no special level of intelligence or concentration. It's effortless and natural.
Okay. So I know it's a very deep process and things like that, but can you give us kind of a surface look at exactly what goes into this?
Yeah. If you could imagine the surface of the ocean filled with wave activity, that would be like the surface of the mind all day. Very, very active thought after thought after thought after thought. If you tried to calm the waves down on the surface of the ocean, it would be very difficult, wouldn't it? But if you wanted to experience the calmness of the ocean, you would dive deep in the ocean, deeper and deeper and deeper, and eventually you get to that calm, quiet level of the water deep within the ocean. Well, the mind is very active on the surface, many, many different thoughts. So with TM, we dive deep in consciousness in a very simple, natural way and experience a very settled state of awareness beyond the thinking process. And it turns out having that highly settled state beyond thought is very beneficial to the physiology and to brain functioning and for stress reduction.
Now, are there sort of some main things to hit on here of how to do that? Because to me, in my mind, I can't even imagine what that would be like to not be able to think or to just stop for a second. How does that work?
Well, with TM, we use the natural tendency of the mind, which is to seek fields of greater happiness, as the motivation for this inward direction of thinking. Because as it turns out, these subtler levels of thinking, these less active levels of thinking, a reduction in mental activity, is increasingly more peaceful and enjoyable and charming to the mind. So you learn a very simple procedure to take advantage of the mind's own natural tendency to seek those fields of greater happiness, and therefore the settling down of the mind during TM happens effortlessly and automatically.
Okay. Now, what about the benefits of this, of settling your mind?
Yeah. Well, the mind and body are very intimately related, and in our daily activity, when we experience things through the world, we go into what scientists call the stress response, which creates enormous excitation in the mind and body and creates a lot of impressions of stress, and it really affects brain functioning. Of course, the brain is used in everything that we do. TM produces a state of neurophysiological functioning, as science shows, that is the mirror opposite of the stress response. So it allows the body's own inner intelligence to begin to eliminate very deep-rooted stresses in the nervous system. And I like to say TM is not a stress management program. I'm not interested in managing stress. I wouldn't want to manage my garbage. I eliminate it. Okay. So TM is a stress elimination program. And then, of course, when we eliminate stress, health and brain functioning and creativity and relationships and everything starts to improve.
Very interesting. Well, when we come back, we're going to be learning more about the deep history that goes behind this is transcendental meditation technique. And again, Mark Cohen, we appreciate you coming and talking with us. We'll be back with him in just a little bit. On over to Melanie. We're back with Mark Cohen talking about transcendental meditation technique, and we've just kind of learned a little bit about what it is, but we want to know the history about this technique.
Well, TM is an ancient technique. It really is as old as man, because everybody has a brain, everybody has a mind, and the technique just involves the natural tendency of the mind, so it's thousands of years old. But it's been probably taught around the world in a kind of a modern setting of the world for about 50 years.
Okay. So does this have sort of a religious backing, or is this science backing?
Purely scientific. There's no religion involved with TM. In fact, belief has nothing to do with how the technique works. It would work whether you believed in it or not. If you had a ball in your hand and it fell to the ground when you dropped it, it would happen whether you believed it would happen or not. It's laws of nature. So like that, TM is very scientific, doesn't involve any change in lifestyle or belief systems or anything. You just practice the technique very simply twice a day.
Okay, so how can someone learn something like this?
Well, the first thing they would do is try to contact their local TM program. In Georgia, there's one, and it's in Atlanta.
Okay.
But we could set up courses in local areas if we had enough interest. For example, in Albany, if there was 7, 8, 9, 10 people that wanted to take the training, we could provide a teacher to come and teach here. But they should go to the website, probably tm.org, to find out more about TM and contact us at our local contact information.
Okay. Well, there's something called the David Lynch Foundation, and it's kind of a scholarships for helping people with this stress reduction. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, the David Lynch Foundation is kind of a sister organization that raises funds for at-risk populations to learn this stress reduction technique of TM. For example, we've been working with veterans coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq who have post-traumatic stress disorder. The #1 reason our soldiers are dying is not from battle, it's from suicide due to PTSD. And TM has been found to be very effective in reducing the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. There have been a couple of small studies which have been done now showing the reductions in PTSD, and now there's a larger study going on. And so the military is very, very interested in its effects. It seems to have a great effect. I've personally taught some veterans with PTSD, and it's amazing how quickly they turn around from this practice.
And now there's also people such as different assault victims that it kind of goes to as well.
Yeah. For example, victims of terror in war-torn countries who have terrible PTSD have been taught the program. Orphans in South America and Central America have learned the practice. Prison populations have learned it. We have a program for homeless men. We have a program for women who are victims of military sexual trauma, another program for women who are runaways. So these sort of highly stressed populations have been able to benefit from the very profound stress reduction that TM produces.
Now, I have a hard time kind of trying to figure this all out because I keep thinking I wouldn't be able to ever think about one thing. I'd be thinking about my laundry or my cleaning list. So is it sort of just trying to focus on one thing really hard, or how exactly does it work like that?
It's a good question. We don't try to focus on anything because that's just another thought anyway. And we don't try to make our mind settle down because if any effort or trying just produces more thinking.
Right, yes.
Yeah. So we just learn a very simple technique to keep the mind alert or awake. We are aware of an impulse of thought, but we create a sort of a combination of criteria that turns the mind within, keeps it awake but undirected. And when that takes place, the natural tendency of the mind to seek fields of greater happiness spontaneously takes over, and it causes the mind just to begin to become less active and less active and less active and less active, then least active, and transcending thought altogether to experience that fully awake, fully alert, what's called pure awareness, which is a very, very settled, restful, peaceful state of the mind.
Well, we appreciate you coming to talk with us today. Again, Mark Cohen, Albany native, now living in Atlanta, and we look forward to talking with him in the next hour to hear more about the Transcendental Meditation Technique. On over to Melanie.